you then, I would like to pass the word to our colleague and EU specialist, Eirik, for a short rundown of financing opportunities within the EU system. Please, Eirik. We can see your screen, but your calendar primarily.
Oh no, I was trying to share my my presentation. There we go. I'll try again. There we go.
Wonderful. It's not full screen, but I think, oh, there we go. You even managed full screen. Beautiful.
D'accord. Je m'appelle Eric. Je vais maintenant parler en anglais parce que mon français est terrible. Je suis très désolé. Okay, so I'm switching to English. I'm going to keep it in English as I'm much more comfortable with that, and since there are participants both from Norway and France. I'm working with EU funding, and I'm going to briefly take you through the sort of landscape of opportunities. There are quite a lot of, at least the way I see it, there's quite a lot of opportunities for offshore wind. So without further ado, I'm just going to make a sort of a general overview of what it looks like. I know it can be quite confusing to try to understand all the different opportunities out there. So I've tried to sort of rank it in terms of what's available now, what's ongoing, and what's coming also in the future. So just to sort of go very quickly through it, we have Horizon 2020, which is a research and innovation program. It's mostly for technology development. It typically covers 70% of costs. It's usually available within all different types of topics, but we're nearing the end of the program. It's in the name. It's actually expiring this year. As part of Horizon 2020, there's the Green Deal, which is also a set of grants that cover 70% of costs, but it specializes on clean tech. I'll go a little bit more into that in a bit. I also would like to mention the EIB group. This is a different type of funding, but it's definitely worth mentioning because I definitely think it could be relevant to offshore wind. They provide loans, investments, guarantees, and so on and so forth within all types of topics, and that's ongoing. There are no specific calls there, at least as far as I'm concerned. But it's worth mentioning because it could be that especially more commercial types of projects could benefit from getting funding from the EIB group. Then there's the Innovation Fund, which is a relatively new vehicle, typically also grants, but covering 60% of costs, specifically within clean tech. There is a call out now, and at the end of October, that will be it for a while. And then there are future calls also that will be relevant for offshore wind. And in the future, next year onwards, we'll see Horizon Europe, which is the next sort of research and innovation fund. It will also cover typically 70% of costs, and it will be within all types of sort of sectors. Again, as far as I know, there are definitely opportunities for offshore wind. I think it's definitely something that if you're thinking of positioning for a sort of collaborative type of project in the future, that could be relevant for sort of especially Norwegian-French partnerships. So to put it a little bit into perspective, where are we at the moment? That's Horizon 2020. As I mentioned, the fund size is 80 billion euros. It started in 2014. It ends this year. It's typically only grants. It covers 70% of direct costs. That is especially, well, that's for industry especially. So if you're a research institute or a university, the costs is closer to 100%. But for industry, small companies, big companies, it will be 70%. And calls, they vary. They are typically within all types of sectors. There's everything from energy to health, AI, etc. But they're typically launched every 2 years. So we are at the end of one of those sort of call rounds now, and that is also what I would like to focus on in a bit. I'd like to just highlight an example of actual French and Norwegian cooperation and other European partners, for that matter, within offshore wind. So this project is called Flagship. It's a 25 million euro project. Well, it's 25 million in funding from the European Union. The total project cost is closer to 60 million. So it's about demonstrating a 10 megawatt floating wind turbine with a levelized cost of energy reduction with 40 to 60 euros per megawatt hour. The start date for this project is, or actually was, 1st of September this year, and the coordinator is Iberdrola from Spain. And then we have a couple of partners from Norway and Germany, Spain, and France and Denmark. So that's like, I would say it's a really great example of how leading offshore nations can work together on solving crucial sort of challenges in order to spur new sort of market opportunities. So I would like to highlight a specific call within Horizon 2020. Like I mentioned, we are towards the end of the Horizon 2020 program. And within the Green Deal calls, there is a specific one called Demonstration of Innovative Technologies to Enable Future Large-Scale Deployment of Offshore Renewable Energy. Quite a mouthful, but basically it's all about trying to solve, at sea, I've highlighted it in yellow as you can see, certain types of challenges related to power generation and offshore grid infrastructure, and also power to X, so for instance hydrogen production. The expectation in this call is to reach sort of demonstration level. So this is supposed to build upon existing technology at prototype level minimum, and develop that at full scale at sea. And they foresee a budget size of 20 to 35 million per project. So the budget behind this call is, I think, 68 million euros. So there will be two winning projects on this one. I think they estimate one for focusing more on the grid infrastructure and one more on offshore renewable energy generation. So that's definitely something that's particularly interesting for those that are that want to sort of test new technologies in a sort of pan-European type of partnership. The deadline for this one is the 26th of January 2021, which means that you already are late in terms of trying to develop or participate in this type of call. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it definitely means if you're interested, you need to start looking and join a consortium. Right, then I mentioned this earlier, it's the EIB group. It consists of the European Investment Bank and the European Investment Fund. The reason I mentioned this is because, like I mentioned earlier, if you're not necessarily looking for partnerships in terms of technology development and you'd rather build factories or infrastructure or have more commercial types of developments or commercial goals, then the EIB can provide loans, equity investments and guarantees, and the EIF can also provide equity and debt financial instruments, particularly towards SMEs. So it's definitely worth looking into. And the reason why I'm also bringing it up here is because the EIB group has a new ambition of supporting 1 trillion of investments in climate action and environmental sustainability from 2021 to 2030. And it also aims to have 50% of its share of financing in the climate action and environmental sustainability by 2025. So there's quite a lot of opportunities there, essentially, if you have offshore wind projects, at least the way I see it, it's worth investigating. Then there's the Innovation Fund, which is relatively new, and it's already also quite close to the first deadline. It's on the 29th of October, which is in a very short while. Again, if you're interested here, you have to make your expression heard relatively soon. The main focus is on innovative low-carbon technologies, carbon capture in usage and carbon capture storage, renewable energy generation, and energy storage. So the main goal essentially of this program is to cut greenhouse gas emissions. If you have any type of project, whether or not it's a very commercial one or if it's more of a demonstration type of project, this could be relevant. It's based on a sort of two-stage type of process, so you need to make your expression sort of known by the deadline in 29th of October. It's quite an extensive first. It's not like a very easy first expression of interest. It's like 200 pages you need to submit. So it's not something that you do lightly, but if it's something that's of interest, you should certainly look into it. The full application will be then it will have to be submitted, I think, by June next year. So there's some time between the first expression of interest and the full application. I borrowed a slide here from our sister organization, Renewable, which is the main sort of advisors on this this type of funding scheme. Just like to highlight some of the aspects behind it, because this is just the first call. There will be several calls in the future, both large scale and small scale. This first funding round that I just mentioned now in October, that one is exclusively for large scale projects. That means that projects need to be over 7.5 million euros in order to qualify. But in the future, there will also be both large scale and small scale calls. Because this is something that's financed by income from the EU emissions trading system. And there will be at least 10 billion euros spent through this program up until 2030. I could also mention that it's possible here to apply either as a single entity or as a consortium. So it's I don't think there's much more to mention about the Innovation Fund at the moment, but again, if it's something that you think is interesting, you should definitely look into it relatively soon. That's my only sort of opinion on that. Lastly, there is Horizon Europe, which is the next research and innovation program. This is about future calls. The fund size is likely to be close to 91 billion. There's a dialogue going on between the European Parliament and the Council. They are deciding what the fund size will be and so on, but essentially it will end up at something close to this. The time frame will then be from 2021 to 2027. Norway has just indicated that it wants to join this program, so cooperation essentially in the future between, say, Norwegian and French partners is going to be feasible. Again, like in Horizon 2020, calls will become available every 2 years within all types of topics. And as far as I understand, there are going to be several opportunities for offshore wind, both in a low sort of technology type of or in the sort of earlier development and also later type of development of technologies. That's really all that I had in terms of the funding opportunities within or that's relevant for offshore wind. What I could mention about the EIB group is that the general rule of thumb, if you're interested in approaching them, is that you should have your project should essentially be over 10 million euros, and you'll have to bring at least if you're expecting to get 10 million in loans, you'll have to be able to provide 10 million as well in private funding as well, so that they don't fund more than 50%. So those are relatively big projects. So that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eirik. If that's all you had, that was it was a lot of money, and at the same time, I think a very sort of accessible and orderly introduction to the financing system within the EU. We're going to move to accessible funding in the Norwegian and French business support systems, respectively. I just want to mention that I put in a note also in the chat that hopefully we will have a few minutes left at the end of the session for questions. So if you have burning questions, please do put them in the chat. And then also panelists, you please feel free to answer them. We run this pretty much as a working meeting too. Feel free to answer them in the chat directly, or we'll try to come back to them at the end of the session. I've also posted in the chat the link to the French-Norwegian task team. The website was just launched today. We will share all the slides provided that our panelists agree, and those will also be posted on that task team website, so you can refer back if you want afterwards. Then I would like to pass the word to our colleague Ivar Singstad, Global Head of Energy at Innovation Norway, to give us a very brief rundown of the support system internally. I should just mention, because I did get an inside comment in from the Norwegian Research Council that asked me to mention that they do also have funding within their system and also within our systems for writing these proposals. They're quite comprehensive, as Eirik said. You might have to travel, not at the moment, but the time and money spent getting those consortiums up and running also have funding structures. So if you're considering or spending money getting these consortiums up and running, or even having discussions about it, there is funding available within the Research Council and also Innovation Norway. So tick. Please, Ivar.
Thank you. You can see the presentation, Ellie? It's
yes.
Okay? Yeah, okay. Hi, guys. My name is Ivar Singstad. I'm head of clean energy at Innovation Norway. I'm just very briefly going to say something about our funding opportunities for Norwegian companies within this field, also in cooperation with French companies. So at Innovation Norway, our goal is to contribute to the lasting growth of Norwegian businesses and industry. During the COVID-19 crisis, we have got some increased funds for that purpose, and that's for loans and grants for startups, for innovation grants that I'm going to talk more about, and loans also for internationalization and for growth for companies. So we have a lot of money this year. That's probably my main message, that there's money for innovation projects within clean energy now. Just briefly, we have the most relevant scheme is something called the Environmental Technology Scheme, or Miljøteknologiordningen in Norwegian, for those of you who are Norwegian. And that's basically a program that's set up for pilot and demonstration projects within this area, for the development of new technologies and for the demonstration of technologies. And this, it has to be a Norwegian entity that applies, but a pilot project might as well be in France as in Norway. So a Norwegian company that wants to demonstrate a new technology in France can get funding from Norway to do the demonstration in France. And in all of these cases, it's always nice with there's a strength if there's a customer involved in the projects and that they are participating. So if you have a French customer or someone, a partner participating into the project, that's positive. So I'm not going to say much more than that in that case. If you want to know more and are interested, you have an innovation project within offshore wind, please go into our webpage and learn more, and contact me or any of our colleagues to get more information. Very brief, but that's about it for now. It's a Friday afternoon, and let's keep it short and simple. Yeah.
Excellent. Brilliant, Eva. Short and simple, and very relevant, I think, for the colleagues around the table. I'll pass immediately to other colleagues within the business support system. We pride ourselves on sort of a one door. We are different organizations, but we work very much in collaboration. And I'm very happy to have with us this afternoon, as already said, Ivar Løvberget from Export Credit Norway and Ute Borgart from GIEC. Please, Ivar and Ute, continue.
Thank you. Ute, will you start quickly?
You muted Ute, so you have to unmute.
Yeah, not only the camera, but also the sound. Yeah, thank you very much, Eli, for giving us the opportunity to present our solutions. Shortly about myself, I'm an underwriter in the clean technology team at GIEC, and Eva from Export Credit, we will start, so then I will fill in for the rest of the presentation.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Very well, thank you.
And can you see the presentation also?
Yes.
Yeah, that's very good. My name is Ivar Løberget. My role is head of the Energy and Industry Group at Export Credit Norway. And in cooperation with GIEC, we would like to give a brief introduction to Norway's Export Credit Agency system, what we can offer to the offshore wind sector, and also briefly touch upon some market trends from our point of view. We will also go through some small case studies. The Norwegian Export Credit Agency system consists of two players, GIEC and Export Credit Norway. We share the same owner, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and have the same objective to support and promote Norwegian exports. We differ slightly in the way we operate and the products that we offer to our clients. In short, GIEC offers guarantees, whereas Export Credit offers loans. A few weeks ago, it was announced that the government has decided to merge the two Norwegian ECA institutions. The new entity will be operated from 1st of July, and the purpose is to make the offered solutions simpler for the customers and to create a more efficient ECA system. The offered solutions by Export Credit and GIEC will be continued in the new entity. This means that we will be there also in the future, but in different formats. Export Credit Norway provides loans to buyers of Norwegian capital goods and services, and GIEC provides a variety of guarantees to offload risks. And Ute will tell a bit more about the guarantee part later. Wind parks around the world may buy Norwegian capital goods, and then they will qualify for our product offerings. To wind park developers buying Norwegian goods, we can offer long-term lending up to 18 years tenor from the ready commissioned projects, which means that total tenors can be more than 20 years for this type of renewable projects. We offer both fixed and floating rates, and this table shows the current fixed rates that we offer for financing of export contracts signed today and the next month. As you can see, the offered fixed rate for 18 years tenor in euros today is 0.73%. And here are some general market trends from our point of view. Despite COVID-19, we see very high activity. The energy transition is not being halted by the pandemic. Rather the contrary, it seems that the transition is being accelerated. There is a robust growth potential for floating offshore wind. That means that if you want to be a part of the future, you need to take action now. An increasing number of developers source equipment and services from Norwegian manufacturers and installers. And notable regional trends include that we see a high need for ECA financing for offshore wind projects in emerging markets, especially where banks are cautious. But there's a very high bank appetite for conventional bottom-fixed wind projects in Europe, especially if the technology is proven and the project has fixed price offtake agreements. In more risky projects, for instance, floating a wind with untested technology, it's expected that banks' appetite will be reduced and the need for ECAs will be higher. Looking at a few examples of key Norwegian exporters. This This slide only shows a handful of exporters, and in addition to this list of names, there are many other Norwegian companies active in the offshore wind sector, both as suppliers and operators. The first few names on this slide are EPC contractors, whereas the last two names offer installation services. We can also finance installation services to wind parks. And as you see here, Nexans, which is a French company, but has a considerable cable manufacturing operation out of Norway. That means that we can also support their Norwegian business, which you will see in some of the examples following. We'll now quickly go through a couple of cases. This first case is a financing of a wind farm off the coast of Belgium, supporting cable deliveries from Nexans in Norway. Export Credit Norway provides financing to this project. And in this financing, we were originally guaranteed by GIEK, but then this was changed to a commercial bank a couple of years ago. So we can cooperate with both GIEK and banks. And now I'll leave the word to Ute to take you through a few more examples.
Yeah, thank you, Ivar. I would say the main advantage for using GIEK is the high standing state guarantees from Norway carry. Our guarantees enable banks and life insurers to provide funding at very attractive rates. We see that in syndicates, GIEK guaranteed tranches receive very low funding rates, thus reducing the overall financing costs for the borrower. Funding is attractive under our guarantees, and often also the CIR rate mentioned by Ivar is very favorable. So this is something developers of offshore wind farms should check out. Could you move to the next one, please? Thank you. Yeah, the last months we have been quite busy guaranteeing for offshore wind projects, and we are delighted to see that an increasing number of Norwegian suppliers win contracts in this sector, which we hope will grow for GIEK and for the Norwegian export industry. These times are really fun to work with renewable energy. So next slide, please. I have to coordinate with Ivar here. Also presenting some of the transactions we've been working on. Earlier this year, we had financial close for this project in Taiwan. Copenhagen Infrastructure is the developer, and the reason for GIEK's participation were installation services from Fred. Olsen Wind Carrier. So that's a typical offshore wind financing with a syndicate of 25 commercial banks and several export credit agencies. And as was mentioned, this is a relatively new market. So for commercial banks, it was interesting to have ECAs as part of the consortium. Could you change to the next slide? Yeah, and this Seagreen project reached financial close early in June this year. It's a very big project developed by SSE, a British energy company, who also has a successful built the Beatrice wind farm. Here, Nexans from Norway will deliver offshore and onshore cables and install them. So that was the reason for GIEK's participation. We did this project together with commercial banks and EKF from Denmark, and we try to act as commercial as possible and not being very bureaucratic as a governmental institution. So this process has been very smooth up to the financial close, and we are very proud of being part of that. Also for this project, it's interesting that the vessel Nexans is intending to use to install the cables is currently under construction at Ulsteinverft in Norway. And both GIEK and Export Credit are also part of the ship financing for Nexans in this case. So with the next slide, yeah, thank you. We will focus on other tools GIEK has available. While the biocredit is the most used tool in export financing, we have also guarantees in addition to help Norwegian exporters directly. And amongst these counter guarantees are the most widely used instrument. And how does it work? Before signing or in connection with a contract, exporters are often required to provide the buyer with guarantees, whether it be advance payment guarantees or performance or warranty guarantees. And in offshore wind in particular, these guarantee requirements are very substantial, putting pressure on the credit facility of the company. So here GIEK can provide risk capacity to help the exporter's bank to issue these guarantees. And we have done that in this case, or in these cases, I might say, because we issued several guarantees for IBEL, who had won contracts to build high voltage DC platforms, both for German tenants and also two of these platforms for the Doggerbank project, which is developed by Equinor and SSE. So the next slide I took in this presentation because usually we are talking only about export, but now recently we also were allowed to guarantee for projects in Norway if they are using floating wind technology. So with the Norwegian government having opened two areas south between Norway and Denmark, we see that there is a potential for a floating wind and where GIEK also can be relevant to finance these projects. And new technology is always a bit more risky, thus making it more acceptable for banks to share the risk with us as ECAs. So I think that was it. So again, thanks a lot for being able to give you this presentation, and you are welcome to contact either Ivar or me when you have questions or concrete projects you would like to discuss with us. So the information is on the presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Ute and Ivar. I think that was a very comprehensive and also inspiring presentation. 4 billion euros for offshore wind recently. That's significant. We will take a couple of questions, as I said, at the end. If there is time left, please jot them down in the chat if you have anything immediately. Otherwise, as we said, we'll share the slides and the contacts. We're obviously there to answer any questions or requests that you might have. But we've heard now a very interesting introduction to opportunities within the EU and the Norwegian business support system, including opportunities for French buyers of Norwegian products or French partners. Let's also get to the other side. We have with us Anthony Lagrande, who will give us a brief rundown of the opportunities within the French business support system, and most notably BPI and ADEME. So Anthony, the floor is yours, and please feel free to share your screen with the rest of us. Are you there, Anthony? We cannot hear you. Maybe you have to unmute.
Yes. Sorry.
There you are.
Yeah. I'm sharing the screen. Can you see it?
It was me in double for a moment, but if you switch to the PowerPoint, we can see your screen for the moment and not the PowerPoint.
Oh. Okay. If we try again.
Here we go. Wonderful. And if you put that in full screen, I think there we good. Excellent.
Okay, perfect.
We cannot see you, so you might have to want to switch your camera on if you want to show a face.
Just a second. It seems that I cannot share my camera during sharing at the same time my screen.
Don't worry.
Then just after. And so, just to begin with, and a global overview of what we do in France, because sometimes it can be a little bit complicated. We have on the strategic side the ministries that does all the decision of the global public, the global policies decision, and then gives advice and gives direction to the operators to operate finance funding calls or other way to help the ecosystem. So in France, we have 4 main operators for what we call the Programme d'Investissement d'Avenir, the equivalent of Horizon Europe for France. And we have ANR, which is fundamental research. It helps more universities and schools to develop things at low level, at low TRL level. Then you can find ADEME and BPI France, which are positioned in between TRL. For BPI France is more of a generic operator, which can operate on health, on banking, on industrial problematics. And ADEME is more on all the things you can find on ecological and environmental transition. So especially if we talk about energy and maritime energy, ADEME is the best operator for this. And at the end, we have Caisse des Dépôts, which is more used to help deployment of technology when technology is more mature, when the idea is to help private sector to convince private sector to go in new fields. Caisse des Dépôts can help with the support of public funding. In addition to that, you can find some specific entities in France, which are called IRT and ITE for Research Transition Institute, Research Technological Institute, and then Ecological Transition Institute. Specifically for the matter we talk about today, you have France Énergie Marine and the IRT Jules Verne. You can check out on Google, and you will find what are the projects they can work on today. And finally, we have what we call facilitators that are in France, specific entities that make the links between public and private. We have 2 clusters, Pôle Mer Bretagne Atlantique and Pôle Mer Méditerranée. Don't hesitate to contact these clusters that knows very well how the public system is functioning, and knows very well the ecosystem, especially in the when we talk about maritime sector. These two pôle mer are the most appropriate. And finally, we have the Corimer, which is an entity co-piloted by the Prime Minister's services. And the idea is to concentrate on a unique actor, all the reflection and the strategic decision about a unique theme as maritime energy and maritime transport. And finally, you have the private sector you already know, and we have in every country. If I go just to give you some example of what we already financed in this matter, we have a number of projects on floating wind turbine farms. Just to give you an idea, the size of these projects were about 70 or 80 million euros. And the objective of this project was to demonstrate that we can reach a technical and economical viability. So we have to finance not only one but many projects just to compare the performance of each of them. And on the other side, sorry, we have other type of projects that are more technological project to develop a new floating system or new cable system to link the farms with the territories. So we can have some specific development projects to help develop specific technological solution to answer to some specific problematics of wind floating wind turbine. And finally, if you want to know more about this, we have a specific documentation to summarize what we already did on this subject. You will have the link in the just below the presentation, and you can find on ADEM site all the precision you would like to have on this subject. As other people said earlier, don't hesitate to contact us if you have questions about this. We can help you give you precision on how calls are running concerning French systems. And as for Regional Europe, it's handed for us for the third program. The fourth program will begin at 2021, maybe with some differences than compared to the third one. But the idea is to continue support energy developments and maybe more on a deployment aspect and fundamental R&D aspect. So that's it for me.
Excellent.
If you have any question.
Thank you so much, Anthony. That was a very clear and succinct summary, I think, of some of the French financing tools and mechanism. It is, and there we also see your face. Thank you very much for being with us, both digitally and visually this afternoon. I think it's fair to say that both for the Norwegian and French side, even for those of us working within the systems, we have engaged with various parts of these mechanisms. Many of the, I think, businesses around the table have used them in various forms, but it's very, very useful to get it summarized so clearly and efficiently laid out. And we could also just add that on the French side, we noted your invitation to get in touch. Of course, we are also from Innovation Norway and Team Norway side based in Paris, working closely with a number of these actors, including the various clusters and the other institutions. So if either from the French side there contacts needed towards the Norwegian business support system or vice versa, don't hesitate to also use us as intermediaries. All right, we've had a very succinct but rich overview, I would still say, of opportunities for financing and French-Norwegian and I would say European collaboration within offshore wind, within the EU system and within the respective business support systems. As Eirik highlighted, the deadline on some of these calls within the EU are extremely short, but that's also why we really just got ourselves together and did this seminar at a week's notice. We thought it was better to have it sooner and not so perfect rather than later and too late, but more polished perhaps. We hope we also found it useful. We have a few more minutes for questions. Anyone in the audience, please put your digital hand up or dot it down in the chat function. The floor is open, or if amongst panels there's anything you would like to clarify or add, please do. This is where you really would have liked to be in a physical room and could see people sort of hesitating, but here you actually have to put your hand up or just unmute. No, it was all crystal clear from everyone. That's wonderful. We will, well, in that case, I would just like to say thanks again to our contributors this afternoon, also for coming in at such short notice. This was extremely useful for us, and I think many around the table. Ute, do you have a comment or a remark, please?
Yeah, a very practical remark. Would it be possible to get a list of the participants?
We can see if we can do that. I think there's I have to admit, I'm actually not sure if we share that outside the organization. It's EU rules and that the GDPR thing, so I'm aware, but if possible, we would, and we could also just ask participants if they're willing to share the list, in which case, if they approve, of course, we would. We will share, provided that you panelists and contributors accept, we will share your presentations and your contacts the other way. We'll do that by email form to all the signups, and we will also put this this presentation and the recording, if I now have done the technique right, up on the task team website, the link of which you can now see in the chat at least on my right side of the screen. So thanks again all for being here. Chapeau, as you say in French. Well done on you for sitting it out on a Friday afternoon. Have a very good end of the week. Happy weekend, everyone, and hope to see you soon.